aspects of it were even going on up until very recently, or of the what happened after that. And we had sort of continued reporting on this. We were waiting. A lot of the delay was because of having to wait on Michigan State to get documents, to get records. Every time we'd come up with something else, we'd make a request. They would take months to get back to us. And then the Nassar stuff started really getting going, and we stepped back and said, is there a bigger picture story to be done here? And is there a need to sort of look at these things together as opposed to separately?
Now, obviously, the Nassar stuff, everybody knows. Nobody can defend anything in that case, what Michigan State did. When it comes to the football and the basketball programs, do you think that Tom Izzo and Mark Dantonio should lose their jobs over the stuff you guys uncovered?
That is not my position to say whatsoever. I would say that we need more information. I would say, reiterate what was said in the story, is that they were aware. We have information that indicates they were aware of some of these cases. One thing that the big question that we asked Michigan State, and we reached out to Dantonio and Izzo through the sports information directors quite some time ago to ask them questions about this. I mean, we presented this information to them and never really got an answer as to what they knew, what they did with the information, what their superiors did. And I think what you just asked me is going to be based on what the truth is about all of those questions. But they can't really say that they weren't aware of some of the stuff going on. I can tell you that.
We're talking to Paula Lavigne from ESPN. She's been with ESPN since 2008, part of the Outside the Lines, ESPN.com, and SportsCenter. Now, to kind of follow up on that, Mark Dantonio spoke Friday night before Michigan State played their basketball game against Indiana, and he was rather emphatic in his denial. And then you followed up, correct, over the weekend after receiving an email from Lauren, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Alsweed, saying that what Mark Dantonio said on Friday night was not true, correct?
She was defending her position and just what she's witnessed over the years about how there was a disconnect with the student-athlete cases. But one thing I wanted to say about what Dantonio said, he says that he's denying that accusations of my handling of any complaints of handling sexual assault individually are false. One thing we say in the story was that he had a role. That's the indication we have, is that he had a role in handling it. So those little hedge words here and there are important, right? Mm-hmm. Because, maybe the question is, did he have a role in this, but did he also report it to Mark Hollis or whoever else, right? So that's the little bit of uncertainty there. And then it's also really unclear. A reporter asked him, the two questions he takes, one of them is, were you aware of this previously unreported incidents? And his response is, they came to me from the authorities. Well, when did they come to you from the authorities? Because the one thing that we really press in our piece is that back in June of 2017, when he was addressing the 4 cases from earlier that year, he says at least twice that this is the first time we've had to deal with this. Well, if he acknowledges that he knew about these other cases back when they happened, that would be contradicting what he said in June.
Right.
The thing about Tom Izzo, that he spoke yesterday, and your colleague Tisha Thompson was grilling him pretty good at the press conference, that alarmed us that he seemed to forget why Travis Walton left Michigan State. Did you find that alarming as well?
Yeah, yes. He, as your audience knows, and as anyone in Michigan State knows, he and Travis Walton are very close.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine that he wouldn't know why he left Michigan State.
Paula, you wrote a book about Baylor and the scandal that went on there. Obviously, you know that case intimately, and obviously, in your role as a investigative journalist in sports and collegiate sports, you have seen all kinds of rules violations at various universities. The claim here by Michigan State fans, I'm not saying by the university itself, but by fans, will be, oh, come on, this goes on everywhere, right? From what you've seen, cases you've seen, is what's happened at Michigan State equal to what's happening in other universities, Big Ten or otherwise, or is this unique, what's been happening here over the last 10, 15 years?
Well, let's just say that it shouldn't be a competition, right?
Correct.
I mean, the fan base shouldn't look at it and say, well, they're worse than we are, so therefore, I mean, it's sad, but that's how every fan base deals with it. But they're right. I mean, and we've always said this. I mean, every time when I was reporting on Florida State and Missouri and Baylor, I mean, of course, this is happening all across the country. That's, there's no doubt of that. But the problem I have is that fans would use that to deflect what's happening in their own backyard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially, when we talk about the Nassau case, we talk about the volume, more than 150 women, girls. One is too many. This should not be a competition. This should not be, well, we're not as bad as so-and-so, so therefore, stop reporting on these cases here. I see that mentality everywhere. I saw it with Baylor, and I'm starting to see it here.
The one thing on the television piece that was kind of troubling to me, as far as, I don't know if you could prove it, was the young lady who unfortunately committed suicide, and they used her journal as evidence of a gang rape, and they went into graphic detail. And because she's deceased, there's no way either side can prove whether that's true or not. And I kind of thought that was, I don't know, kind of weird to actually put out there because you have no idea whether it's true or not.
Well, I could talk to you for an entire show about that case, and we spent a great deal of time looking into that. And
was that the Payne Appling case? Was that or no?
No.
Okay.
This was a case involving the woman named the 4 football players for saying that they had raped her back in 2007. Here's what I think I want people to take away from that case, and this is why we put it in the television piece. First of all, all those players were gone by the time this came to Michigan State's attention. So there's no statement out of that saying that Dantonio or anyone should have done anything to them. But here's what I want people to take from that case. One of the players in that case does this interview and talks about how all throughout the locker room, guys are bragging about having this, I don't know how graphic I can get into it, but having this pretty violent group sex with women, right? Says this happens all the time. Was that communicated? If Dantonio didn't know about that, was that communicated to him that, hey, these guys are gone, but this is what was being talked about in the locker room, and there was an indication that this was widespread. Maybe you want to address this, because I got the sense, and even going back to how Dantonio handled the players in the fight with the hockey team. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Like 2009-ish, right?
Yeah.
He made it clear in that case that, he told players to avoid this type of behavior, and he disciplined guys for even being even going to that party, right? I mean, I get the sense from other cases that he's at least stated he's serious about discipline. When you get an indication, even if you can't deal with that particular case, because I'll tell you right now, that Ashley Dowser case is very complicated. But someone should have looked into, is this still happening? Are my guys still doing this? And do I need to have a discussion? And do we need to bring people in and talk about, our guys should not be engaging in this type of behavior. And that's what I really want people to take away from that case.
Paula, I know you can't predict the future at Michigan State or the NCAA, and maybe you can't even call your own shot at ESPN, but what do you think the next step is? Are you guys continuing to investigate? I mean, obviously you did have a reporter yesterday with the Michigan State basketball team at Maryland. What's the next step for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, within the last 48 hours, people have reached out to us with other information. We're looking into other things. We're anticipating that we'll hear from some more women, from people who, have had some issues in the past that happened with Baylor, happened with, a lot of other schools who dealt with. We have indications that there are more, people out there. And we'll continue pressing the university for information, and I think at the very least, the school needs to be more transparent. And if Dantonio and Izzo feel like they did everything appropriate, then I want to hear that. I want to hear what they did, and I want to hear when they did it.